Okay? I need for each of you to raise your right hands. You and each of you solemnly swear or affirm that in the case of the state of Texas versus Aaron York Dean, you will a true verdict render according to the law and the evidence, so help you God? I do. Okay. Here's what's going to happen. In just a few minutes, the indictment in this case is going to be read in open court, and there will be a plea entered to the indictment. The lawyers then have the ability to make opening statements. The state goes first, the defense goes second. Opening statements are an outline or kind of a summary of what the case is all about, who the lawyers anticipate calling as the witnesses, and what they anticipate those witnesses to testify to. The state will then present their evidence one at a time, and the defense gets to cross-examine those witnesses. At some point, you will hear Mr. Smith or Ms. Diener stand up and say the state rests. What that means is that's all the evidence that the state would have in its case in chief. It then becomes the defense's turn to present evidence if they wish to do so, but remember, as we talked about last week, the defense does not have to do anything if they don't want to. Okay? At some point, you will hear the lawyers for both sides say we rest and we close. What that means, that's all the evidence that you will hear. It then becomes my duty to prepare the set of written instructions that contain all of the law that's applicable to the case. And once I have those instructions prepared, I read them to you here in open court. And after I read the instructions to you, the lawyers will then make their closing arguments. And at the conclusion of the closing arguments, that's when you'll retire to your jury room to begin your deliberations. Okay? So now that you're even closer to me, up here in the comfortable seats, you have two duties. Number one is you have to follow the law as I give it to you at the end of the trial and throughout the trial. And your second duty is to determine the facts and the reasonable inferences that are going to arise from the evidence. The evidence that you will base your verdict on consists of testimony that comes from the witnesses and any physical exhibits that come in as a result of that testimony. Things that you can see, things that you can touch, articles of clothing, photographs, videos, things like that. The admission of that evidence is governed by rules of law, and that's where I get involved. I'm hearing the evidence for the first time just as you are. And so from time to time, I may have to ask you to step out, and I exclude you while I determine whether or not evidence is legally admissible for your purpose while I'm doing my job, just as you will exclude me once you begin doing your job. I'm not allowed to be in the jury room with you during your jury deliberations. Okay? From time to time, the lawyers may make objections throughout the trial, and the purpose of the objections is the lawyers are asking me to rule on a particular rule of law that they feel that may have been violated, and you're not to concern yourself with how I rule on those objections unless I turn and give you a specific instruction, and you will know when that happens. The opening statements and closing arguments of the lawyers are intended to help you, if they do, in understanding the evidence and applying the law. But what the lawyers say is not evidence. The evidence that you base your verdict on will come from the witness stand and not from the lawyers. You must not be influenced in any degree by any personal feeling of sympathy for or prejudice against. The state or the defense in this case for each is entitled to the same fair and impartial consideration. In other words, you're to call it as you see it. Okay? You're not allowed to discuss the case amongst yourselves until you have begun your deliberations. Okay? But you're going to be spending a lot of time with your 13 new friends. Okay? And the law does envision that you're going to talk and get to know each other. All right? But once you have begun your deliberations, it is improper for you to try and influence the deliberations with your own personal experiences. You are to confine your deliberations to what everyone has seen and heard in the courtroom and not what happened to somebody's cousin. Okay? Again, stay away from media. I hope you can appreciate the intense coverage that this case has had and will have. So stay away from that. As I told you, we generally work from 9 until 5. We'll take a mid-morning break, mid-afternoon break, and I will try to get you out of here. As I told you on Friday, we will only work half a day today due to the funeral. Now, as I told you earlier, we are also having to deal with the availability of expert witnesses. And so there may be times that we may not work at all one day because of the trying to get the experts into town. So don't hold that against anybody else. It's just the way the world is right now. But I am very aware that y'all are taking time out of your schedules, and I will work in a manner that time is done well. Okay. You know the rules about taking notes. Okay. We furnished you all of the pad and everything for you, and so it is. Want you to be able to feel comfortable and to do your duty. Is the state ready to proceed?
State's ready, Your Honor.
And defense is ready.
We are, Your Honor.
Mr. Dean, if you'll stand.
Style of the State of Texas versus Aaron York Dean. Indictment number 161-6871B. The name and by the authority of the State of Texas, grand jurors of Tarrant County, Texas, duly elected, tried, and paneled, sworn and charged to inquire of offices committed to Tarrant County, the State of Texas, upon their oaths do present in and to the 372nd District Court of said county that Aaron York Dean, hereinafter called defendant, on or about the 12th day of October 2019, in the county of Tarrant, State of Texas, did then and there intentionally or knowingly cause the death of an individual, Tatiana Jefferson, by shooting Tatiana with a deadly weapon, to wit, a firearm. Paragraph 2, and it is further presented and into said court that on or about the 12th day of October 2019, the defendant in Tarrant County, Texas, did intentionally, with intent to cause serious bodily injury to Tatiana Jefferson, commit an act clearly dangerous to human life, namely, shooting Tatiana Jefferson with a deadly weapon, to wit, a firearm, and thereby cause the death of Tatiana Jefferson. Signed formally the grand jury. Against the peace and dignity of the state.
Mr. Dean, to this charge you may plead guilty or not guilty. What is your plea?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You may be seated. Does the state wish to make an opening statement?
We do, Your Honor.